Absolutely.
We're
Okay.
recording.
Big Apple.
Continue. Okay. All right. We are ready to go. All right. So, Larry, we're ready with the two, the way you had it set up with the two
Yep,
side by side. Okay.
yep.
Very good. Thank you, Larry. All right. I see you right now, Larry, on the screen. Is that recording the way we mentioned?
Hold on.
All right. We got always a little tech nut.
Be okay.
I see Brooklyn Tea Party. All right.
You guys are pinned, so
You got both of us pinned? Okay.
yep.
All right. Very good. All right. Thank you, Andrew Giuliani, for joining us tonight. Andrew is running for governor of the state of New York. And before we start, we just wanted us to, just let us know a little bit about yourself for those who don't know who you are.
Sure.
Please, just tell us a little bit about yourself and where you come from and all that.
Sure. For the last 4 years, I worked for President Trump in the White House. I worked in an office called the Office of Public Liaison, and our focus was on everything private sector based. So basically, the third week I was in the White House, President Trump called me in the Oval Office and said, look, the bureaucrats that have been in DC for the last 35 years, and he used a little bit different language in that, but the swamp monsters who have been in DC for the last 35 years, I don't want them to be the ones who are setting our policy. I want our business CEOs of America to be the ones that are going to set the economic agenda for the Trump administration. And so one of my responsibilities was making sure that our office kept the campaign promise for every regulation the president signed into law, he would cut to. We were also heavily involved in the Paycheck Protection Program, the CARES Act, which actually preserved thousands of MTA jobs because of CARES Act funding. So we basically were right in between the Domestic Policy Council and basically the business CEOs in terms of setting policy for the United States of America. And we work very closely with the Department of Treasury, with Health and Human Services on some of the health issues, and with some of the other agencies that the president has dealt with. Secretary of Transportation dealt with her a lot when it came to the MTA, obviously. So.
Oh, okay, very good. And Andrew, what is your reasons for running for governor of the state of New York? And also, how come you decided not to run for mayor of New York City?
Very good question. So, one of the things that I was focused on working in the White House was figuring out ways to make sure the public sector, the private sector, was engaged in our public policy, as I had mentioned before there. The reason why I've decided to run for governor is because I've seen what New York State has turned into over these last, not just 15, 16 months, but over the last 10 years. We've seen it in New York City. When we're talking about crime, everybody knows here that New York City is now up 70% from where it was in 2020. Well, in 2020, we had more shootings then than we did in 2018 and 2019 combined. Buffalo, we're talking about the highest rate of murders. It's on pace for the highest rate of murders in the history of Buffalo. Rochester's up 68%. So the reason why I decided to run is because I believe, and I really know, that I am the candidate that has the best chance to win and turn this around. I'm the only one that has worked in the executive branch in the White House who's had that experience, seen actually how not just a city turned around, which I obviously, as a younger man, was able to see that and have a unique perspective on that, but really how a country was turned around. And I think the deregulatory agenda, for example, is one of the reasons why we had the lowest unemployment rate since before man walked on the moon in early 2020, and we had the lowest Hispanic American, Asian American, and African American unemployment rate. So your second question, why did I decide not to run for mayor? Well, it's a very good question. And I thought about it, and I thought about it long and hard. And I've spoken with both Curtis, I've spoken with Fernando, the two gentlemen who will be going to the polls tomorrow. And I'm very much looking forward to casting my vote tomorrow and seeing who the eventual candidate is. But the truth is, I thought we had two very good candidates in there in the mayoral election. I thought they would represent the city well. And I thought they would give us the chance that we may need to actually win back the mayor's office. I certainly will do everything that I possibly can, whoever that candidate is, on Wednesday, when we wake up on Wednesday of this week. I will work the city extremely hard for them to make sure. So basically, I just saw that we had an opportunity to win the governor's mansion. And I think some of the candidates, while they're friends, I don't necessarily know if they're going to be the ones that are going to be able to get it over the finish line and win. I know that I can ultimately get it over the finish line and defeat Andrew Cuomo. And look, I talk a lot about bringing New Yorkers back and taxpayers and jobs back. There are two New Yorkers that I'll make exceptions for: Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo. They can head out of state. We don't need their tax dollars. Everybody else, come on back to New York, please.
Absolutely. What are your plans for bringing back law and order back to our state, especially when it comes to like when we have, as we've seen in the city of Manhattan, looked like a ghost town during the riots that were happening, where the storefronts were being destroyed, people's businesses and homes, and also, are you for the death penalty when it comes to murderers? Because that used to be under Pataki, but that was never implemented, and then it went away right away after like 2 years, I believe, when he was in office. Are you for the death penalty for murderers? And also, what is your plans to bring law and order back to?
Well, I won't take capital punishment off the table. Let's put it that way. I think that's something that I want to, frankly, get kind of more read up on and make sure that I'm giving you a complete answer when I make sure I answer that question. I'm not against capital punishment when you think about the most vile criminals in this. And one of the things that I think, and this is one of the meetings that I had last week, which when we talk about crime, right, obviously there are many different factors to this, but we know that from a state level, bail reform has been the most disastrous policy when it comes to seeing this rise in crime. And that's why we're seeing it consistently across the state. And in all states that have implemented bail reform, we're seeing consistently somewhere between a 40% hike in crime, that's what Albany is seeing, to a 70% spike in crime this year. That's what New York City, that's what Rochester, that's what Buffalo is seeing. So one of the things that I think is so important in the judicial process, which seems to have been eliminated, is the rights of victims to ultimately have their voices heard in the sentencing process. And that's one thing that has been repealed from the bail reform process. That's one thing that I would look to implement to bring that back. And I think that is, one of the most important voices when you ultimately talk about the punishment of a criminal. And when you talk also about, well, look, is this somebody who ultimately should be away for life? Should they consider capital punishment? Or is this somebody who really we want to be rehabilitated? Because that really is such an important part of the correction system. Let's not get it wrong, right? People make mistakes, but they ultimately, we want to make sure that the ones who will serve society well have another opportunity. So basically, I would repeal bail reform to get back to the original question. Repeal bail reform, work on that on day one, as that's one of the worst gubernatorial executive orders, I think, not just in the history of our state, but in the history of our country. And I said executive orders, I meant legislation that was passed. I would protect officers' qualified immunity, so you allow them to proactively police. And more importantly, more than anything, I would defend our officers that are in those gray areas, that are out there proactively policing. I think most New Yorkers know that there were fewer greater friends to the NYPD than Rudy Giuliani. Well, I can promise you there will be no governor of New York who is a better friend to our police, where the police will know every day I am standing up for them, than Andrew Giuliani.
Absolutely. Thank you. And are you for or against the vaccine passports? And do you believe that the citizens have the right to choose their own healthcare choice, just like when a woman has a right to choose when it comes to abortion, my body, my choice? And do you think that the city or state should force workers to have the vaccine to continue to work at their jobs?
When you mention it, and just the way you did, it is absurd when you think about the state actually mandating this. What I'm pulling out right now is my driver's license, and you will see right there my ID on there, and that 9-digit ID. If I was to suggest that I show this driver's license at the polls, they would call me racist. They
Right.
would call me all different types of words. But what I find amazing and so hypocritical is the fact that the government actually wants to mandate a vaccine passport while not allowing us to, while basically saying that this is something that's off the table when it comes to securing our ballot.
Yes.
It's beyond absurd, and I think it actually shows the hypocrisy. So basically, this is a decision that I think every single New Yorker should be making with their primary care physician and their family. This is not something that bureaucrats in Albany or a governor should be mandating down to the 19.5 million New Yorkers. And I can't be any clearer on that. I have decided right now, I still have the antibodies. I'm going to continue to test for those antibodies. And when I don't have them, I'm going to make a decision with my wife and with my doctor on whether or not I am going to get the vaccine. I don't know what that decision is yet, but I'm going to continue to follow the science. And the science ultimately says, well, when you have the antibodies, you actually are even more protected. So I'm very happy in that situation right now.
Okay, no, that's very good. I mean, because the way, as you mentioned, it is very hypocritical when it comes to time to vote, when, we have to protect the sanctity of the vote, but that's not okay, of course, as we all seen what happened in the presidential election.
Yeah.
What are your economic plans for bringing our state back from the coronavirus? Are you for a state income tax cut?
Yes, strongly, yes. So let me answer this question in two parts, because all politicians will campaign on tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. And it's important. And by the way, it's good buzzwords, right? Tax cuts, tax cuts, tax cuts. Everybody loves that, right? Very good. And that is something that I will start working on day one. But I want to be as honest with New Yorkers as possible. Taxes come from the legislative branch. What can I do as governor starting on day one to make sure that we can work with, maybe it's actually work through these supermajorities in the state legislature, although I am very confident that with the Giuliani on the top of the ticket, we'll be able to eliminate both of those supermajorities and potentially even win back the state Senate. I think that's what a strong candidate does for you on the top of the ticket. But getting back to what you said before, what I would do every single day for New Yorkers, once I have that tax cut proposal out there, is I will have press conferences letting them know exactly where we stand. And I will go into the districts of the assembly members and the state senators that are refusing to work with us to pass those taxes. And I will use the governor's bully pulpit to let their constituents know that the gentleman or gentle lady that they elected is somebody who believes in competing more with the likes of California or maybe even Venezuela than the likes of California, of Texas, Tennessee, and Florida. Secondly, this is, I think, the second part of what you said. And I think this is where I ultimately can have an effect on day one. Deregulation. I saw this in the president, in President Trump's, in the White House with the president's campaign promise. He said that for every regulation he'd sign, he'd cut 2. That number ended up being over 12. One of the things I'm the most proud of, and one of the reasons why we mentioned those unemployment numbers before.
Oh, Andrew, you got frozen a little bit. You said that number became over 12,000, was it?
Number when he walked out of office, he made the campaign promise that there would be, 2 regulations cut for every 1 he signed into law. That number ended up being 12 to 1 when he walked out of office on January 20th. So I was very, very proud of that. And I know he's proud of that. But basically what it shows is, as governor and with my executive powers as governor on day one, I will have, as governor-elect, our list of regulations prepared to go, that on 12/01, maybe the inauguration speech might take a little bit longer than that. But let's say at 1 o'clock on January 1st of 2023, we start cutting regulation for businesses all around the state to allow small and medium-sized businesses the same opportunity that some of our larger businesses in New York have. The truth, though, is, I mean, even large businesses can't stand this current regulatory environment. And that's why you're seeing the likes of Goldman Sachs moving hundreds of traders and wealth managers down to Florida. Those are massive taxes that we are losing in New York. And they're doing it because it's a terrible regulatory environment and because we are competing with California from a tax perspective. That needs to stop. And with Governor Giuliani, we will do everything we possibly can to make sure that we cut taxes and make ourselves competitive with Florida. And I can promise you on day one, we will deregulate and we will make New York a business-friendly state again and incentivize businesses to build here.
Absolutely. We certainly need that. Under your governorship, would the state of New York still be a sanctuary state for illegal aliens who commit especially violent crimes?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's, this is one of the things that I like to show off because I'm big in terms of the data. And what I mean by that is I think you can find, if you dig through budgets, right, whether it's at a town level, whether it's at a state level, whether it's at a federal level, you can really see the devil is in the details there and you can see where the priorities are. Well, I like to look at this $212 billion budget that Cuomo passed, that Cuomo signed into law, which, by the way, for perspective, the state of Florida's budget is $97 billion. So think about that.
Right.
Florida, which now has 1 million more people than New York, 97 billion. New York, 212 billion, more than double what Florida is. And we know people are moving to Florida and they're moving away from New York, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So what I would ultimately do when it comes to what I was getting at there was, let's look at these numbers here of this most recent budget. And you can see there's been a lot of focus on this $2.1 billion fund for illegal migrants in New York. Well, guess what? Our small businesses that have gone through hell over the last 16 months got allocated only $800 million. So you're telling me that the Assembly, the State Senate, and Andrew Cuomo thought that our small businesses that have been through the ringer, the absolute ringer over the last 16 months and his 10 and a half years in office, mind you, but certainly the ringer over the last 16 months, they get 800 million while illegal migrants get $2.1 billion. How does that work? I mean, that just shows the perspective of it right there. And it's something that I would reverse that immediately.
Yeah, it's pure insanity. Absolutely. How would you deal with the state's homeless population, especially the city, on the city level with our wonderful mayor and his wife, Charlene McCray? She mysteriously found a way to make $1 billion disappear. So she's very good. She's a great magician. Maybe she should maybe take that up when her husband leaves office. But how would you do that? How would you help, especially the city on the state level, to help the city?
Well, I think a lot is going to depend on who the mayor you're going to have working with. But I think one of the things that the governor can do on day one, and I think this is the real important thing, you clean up the subways, right? The MTA is a state run organization, right? So what you then end up showing to New Yorkers, and you start doing it, and we take the same approach that ultimately the Giuliani administration in New York took in 1994, which is quality of life in the subways. No more homeless sleeping in the subways, no more graffiti, no more threatening, certainly no more pushing, more police down there. And guess what? If the mayor within the first week does not want to put more NYPD officers in there, we put state troopers in there. That's what we do. So I can promise New Yorkers that anything that the state is involved in, that is run, will be as clean as possible. Then that way they can ultimately see, wow, I feel very safe when it comes to some of our state-run organizations. I don't feel so safe when it comes to the stuff that ultimately the mayor is in charge with. So I think you have to create that juxtaposition, and that's how you do it. So it would start for me as mayor when it comes to New York City with the subways. That's where it would absolutely start. And I would certainly sit down with the mayor and say, look, I'm going to do this. You can get on board on this. But I think New Yorkers are going to be able to tell a difference very quickly.
Oh, absolutely. Are you for school choice?
Yes, that's one of the three main policy pillars that I talk about in every single speech that I go to. And again, let's talk about this most recent budget that Andrew Cuomo signed into law. He came in office advocating as a school choice advocate, in his words. Well, this most recent budget showed how much he advocated for charter schools and school choice. He kept the state cap at 460. He kept the New York City cap at 270. and he would not even let New York City fill in the zombie schools. And I believe there are about 18 of them. So think about that. You're talking an over 93% success rate, and the 7% that for whatever reason funding fell short, he would not even let them fill in. Meanwhile, he gave the UFT a 16% increase in their budget. And you know, Glenn, this is one of the things that I like to talk about a lot. This to me this is not a red or a blue issue. This is an issue that just makes sense for all New Yorkers, right? You think about it. I was very lucky. My parents had the means to send me to parochial school. But if they didn't, and if I was in a bad situation from a public school perspective, I was up the creek without a paddle. There was no recourse. These policies are hurting traditional Democratic voters in New York, if you think about it. So what I've pledged to New Yorkers is by the end of my first term, I will get that state cap from 460 to over 1,000. I'm certain New York will see the benefit, New York City will see the benefit of a lot of that. But this is also an issue in Buffalo. This is an issue in Rochester, somewhat of an issue in Albany, and it's an issue in Syracuse as well. But it's another way, as a matter of fact, that I think that we become the big tent party. Because the truth is, and I'm actually going to an event in Bushwick on Wednesday. We're going to go in front of, and I forget the number of the public school, so I apologize, but it's a public school in Bushwick, and we're going to talk about their 17% graduation rate.
Oh my
17%.
God.
That's unbelievable. Think about that. Think about that. And if the parents had another choice, if they had another option, don't you think that most of those parents, and you can go take a look at the voting records and see in Bushwick where ultimately, generally, that community votes.
Right.
Don't you think they would ultimately take a chance? So the way that we're going to be able to get through, it's not going to be by me doing this from Midtown Manhattan. I have to go on the ground. It is my responsibility as the candidate to go on the ground, to go into Bushwick, to go into the South Bronx, to go into some of the areas in Queens that are being affected by taking away the gifted and talented program,
right,
and talk with those parents, have
Absolutely.
those conversations, and show that you really, really care about their kids and their kids getting a better education.
Right, absolutely. If they succeed, we all succeed.
Yep.
We're all in this together. We are all New Yorkers. We're all Americans, and that's what the underlying thing is here. Are you for fracking?
Yes. And this is a massive issue on the southern tier. You know, the Marseilles fault. So, you know, if you're driving up New York, right, you're going to go to Sullivan, Delaware County, and then you go to Broome County over here, Tioga. We're talking kind of on the southern tier of New York. There's a big fault right there called the Marseilles Fault, which is in Pennsylvania and New York. Well, guess what? In Pennsylvania, they're allowed to clean frack. They're not allowed to clean frack in New York. And you could see the difference in property values. Just go take a look at Zillow, and you'll see the difference if you end up going, let's say, into Allegheny County, where it's a big issue. So look, Allegheny County, Steuben County, which is probably, I would say, about 90 minutes directly south of Rochester and right on the Pennsylvania border. You'll see it. I mean, it's one of the ways that we're going to relight the economic furnace that is New York. So we absolutely have to be that for that, and I support it.
Absolutely. And could you tell us a little bit something about yourself in the sense of, like, what do you do for fun?
Good question. Well, you know, the way the Yankees have been playing, it's not watching the Yankees right now, unfortunately. No. Although we were doing a little bit better, and then actually, to be honest, I've been consumed the last 2 days, so I don't even know what's happened. I heard Chapman the other day, the fastest pitch in baseball history at almost 104 miles an hour.
Oh, really?
So I don't know if that's true. So I guess I'm having a little bit of fun talking.
He did a triple play the other night.
I heard that too. You know, but one of the things, and this is kind of what I've said, unfortunately, about baseball recently, you know, I have pledged, so even though I kind of, you know, keep an eye on it and all that, I have pledged not to spend a dime of my discretionary income on baseball this year because they won't stand for voter integrity. No. They kneeled for our police last year. And if you do that, guys, look, I'm sorry, I love the Yankees, but I love our NYPD more. If I'm having an issue, if you're having an issue, let's say, are you going to call up Aaron Hicks or Giancarlo Stanton, and are they going to be able to come in? No, it's going to be our men and women in blue. So I'm going to stand with them. So it used to be the Yankees. Now I would say it's, you know, the truth is I'm having a lot of fun doing this. This has been, you know, it's been 34 days, but I've been able to meet so many New Yorkers from all around the state. And one of the things that's amazing is, and there's so many Democrats that have come up to me too, that are just, they're ready for a change. They see what's going on, and they're basically saying, look, if we don't have a change in 2022, I'm going to leave New York. I don't want to see that. So the truth is, this right now is all consuming for me, and I'm enjoying this process. But I would say just spending a little bit of time with my wife. You know, she's my best friend, and you know, I'm very, very, very blessed to have her, and you know, talking some politics with Dad, and doing that stuff. I think that's where I've kind of been able to get my little bit of downtime here recently.
How is your father doing?
He's good. He's, you know, I'll tell you what, and I'm sure all of your members know this. He is a tough guy, and he can take one on the chin. You know, one of the things that we've learned since the FBI raided his apartment 6-7 weeks ago now is the FBI opened a case file into him on May 1st of 2018. Now, the significance of that date is, of May 1st, 2018, is that is within 24 hours of when it became public that he was representing President Trump.
Yeah.
If that doesn't tell you that this is political, then you're just biased. That's it. You're just biased. So what I would say is, you know, there's few people in this country that are tougher than Rudy Giuliani, and I have big shoes to fill, but I'm very, very proud to have somebody like him advising me in this process.
So pertaining to that, what do you think your strengths and weaknesses are compared to your potential opponents coming in the primary for governor? I believe Lee Zeldin is one declared candidate.
Yep.
Rob Astorino, the other one, I think.
Yep, that's right. A couple others, Mike Carpinelli, sheriff from Lewis County, New York, and then Derek Gibson as well. But I know that generally the congressman and the former county executive and myself get kind of more press than anybody else. I think, look, one of the advantages, let's say, is the fact that we are able to drive the news cycle. And that's something that unfortunately the congressman or the former county executive, who I like, they're friends of mine, and they're good at their respective jobs. They just don't have that ability that we have. And that's going to be so important when you think about the next, not just the next 16 months, but certainly the next 12 months, as we have a primary coming up tomorrow here in New York City. Think about this. Andrew Cuomo, and I assume Letitia James, could be somebody else, but I assume Letitia James, they are going to be going at it in a Democratic primary. They are going to be driving the headlines. If we can't have somebody that's going to be able to counter-program that narrative, then we are going to be at a major disadvantage when we're talking about July of 2022. Our campaign has the ability to do that. None of the other campaigns have that ability. Secondly, what I would say is, and our first statewide polls are going to be coming out on Friday. We're going to put them in the field on Wednesday. Everybody's getting hit up with robocalls right now, so I want to wait until the day after the primary. So Wednesday, Thursday, they're going to go in the field. We'll have our numbers back on Friday, and we'll be presenting them either this weekend or early next week. But what we've seen already in our New York City polls, we're up 12 points on our nearest competitor in the Republican primary. And on the Onondaga, which is Syracuse polls, we are also up 14 points on our nearest competitor. Both of them, actually in Onondaga, the nearest competitor is Rob Astorino, and in the city, the nearest competitor is the congressman from Long Island. So what I would say is, I think we are developing a candidacy that really is dictated by the people. I think we are the people's candidate right now. And I know a guy who that worked for 5 years ago pretty well on a presidential level. So I'm very, very comfortable being the people of New York's candidate. And I think that's, I think that's where we are right there.
Yeah.
I feel like when I say that, I got to throw on the new gear right here.
Oh,
so that one's pretty good right there.
Oh,
so
very nice. That's very nice. What is
with the American flag mesh right there?
Look at that.
And of course, made in the USA. Where is it?
Good.
Got to be made in the USA right here. So absolutely.
Absolutely good. Very good. It's like, hey, just like our president with the hat, right? So that's we miss President Trump, and if you could bring some sort of the values that he brought to our country in the sense of just getting out there and getting the issues, addressed and taken care of. then you'll be shooting to the stars.
Thank you.
Your candidacy.
Well, I'll mention that to him. I'm actually having breakfast with him tomorrow, so I will definitely mention
You
that.
mentioned we would love to have him, of course, in the future whenever he's ready to
I'll
come
mention
on.
that to him. I'll mention it
Yeah,
to him.
please do. And also your father is always welcome.
Okay.
We love what he did in the past as the mayor and what he did to help our president. And we appreciate that. And we appreciate you, sir. I know you have an 8:30 appointment tonight, so we'll let you get going unless you want to have a closing statement you wanted to give to the audience.
Sure. I would just say that, one of the things that's been, for me, a real motivation here is, I think there are a lot of people who recently have looked at New York and they think that our greater days are behind us. Well, the truth is, and I've said this before, but it really is true. And the more I go around it, I see it more and more. Our greatest chapters are still to be written in New York.
Right.
That book, New York is such an incredible place that as long as government gets out of the way, and I think this is what you and your organization stands for, if government can get out of the way, there is no place, not just in the country, there's no place in the world like New York. And so for me, what my candidacy will present will be a smaller government candidacy. I will empower local governments. That's one of the things that I will do, because I think the truth is that is such an important part of this, is making sure that our local governments have the ability to be able to make decisions for their constituents. One thing Andrew Cuomo does very well, he does a couple things. He kills senior citizens. That's one thing he does very well.
He
needs to grope AIDS, which is another thing he does very well. But a third thing he does very well, a third thing he does very well is insulate himself from New Yorkers. Anybody who knows, and you know this very well, anybody who knows if they've worked on politics on a very local level, you can't insulate yourself. They're the people you go to church with. They're the people you spend social hour with. They're the people you end up going to, you go to Spumoni Gardens with right there. I don't know if you're by Spumoni Gardens, but that's, Spumoni Gardens, and I always go back and forth between my favorite. It's either Grimaldi's or Spumoni Gardens.
Yeah.
In the world, those are my two favorite places in the world.
Pizza at Grimaldi's, yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, they are absolutely my favorite. And you always get the square if you go to Spumoni Gardens.
Yes,
always the square. So that's one of the things this summer I want to do, and I'll definitely let you know when we're going to do this. But I want to do an event at Spumoni Gardens. So that's a place that I used to play baseball growing up for youth service at the parade grounds. And obviously, my father grew up 2 blocks from Ebbets Field. Right. So it's, very, very close to my heart. So I want to do something at Spumoni Gardens there, just because I remember going there so often as I was a kid. But anyway, I digress. The truth is, New York's greatest days are ahead of it. And with a Governor Giuliani, what we will present is we present a candidacy that will allow New Yorkers, that will allow our people, our businesses to actually have the say in Albany that they need. We'll decentralize power in Albany. And I think more than anything, we will end the war on our cops, which needs to end right now. And I can promise you it will end. Hopefully it ends before then. But if it's not, January 1st of 2023, when I step foot in the governor's mansion, that war on our cops ends.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We definitely need a breath of fresh air up there in Albany, because what the hot air that's been coming down from Albany to the rest of the state for the last 10.5 years has been quite disgusting, especially from that dictator, Andrew Cuomo. So we need him gone, and we need a breath of fresh air into that governor's mansion. So we thank you, sir, for giving your time here tonight with the Brooklyn Tea Party, and God bless you. Thank you. And keep us informed, of course, of any events you have.
Yes.
And we will definitely post that up on our Facebook page and anywhere on our Twitter account also. So we thank you so much, Andrew, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Chairman. I really, really appreciate your time, and I appreciate all of your members' time and consideration. I know we all have busy lives, so thank you again for having me.
Thank you. God bless and have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, Larry, if you could, I guess, switch off the video right now with Andrew so he could